Bet365 is an A-rated book on SBR. Click on their logo to discover why.
Hi, welcome to SBR Forum Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. This is our regular NBA conference update show that we do with Jordan Sharp. Right now, we're at the All-Star break, so we're going to take a look at what we might expect from the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference for the second half of the season. Jordan, thanks for being back with us.
Pete, it's always good talking to you, man. Can you believe it? Only like 30 games remaining in the NBA regular season. Where is time gone?
Hey, don't ask me. I don't know where the time's gone. All right, let's start with the Eastern Conference. You know, we're at the halfway point, so just from the first half of the season, what do you think what's taking you by surprise from the first half of the season from a betting perspective?
Definitely from a betting perspective, I think you have to look at the Toronto Raptors and probably over their last 25 to 26 games, how well they've played. I think they're like 20-7 or 19-7 in their last 25 or 26 games against the spread heading into the All-Star break. Had a little bit of a slump there, but they're absolutely a team that traded Rudy Gay. It seems like a trend is developing in the NBA that if you trade Rudy Gay, you automatically get better. So the Toronto Raptors are experiencing it right now. I think they might continue to be undervalued heading into the second half as well. I mean, they're a team that's really tough, especially to play when they're at home. That trip to Toronto is not a joke. A lot of teams got to do it on the second night of a back-to-back after playing, in the Northeast somewhere. So they're still going to be a pretty tough team, and their defense has been playing so well that I wouldn't be surprised at all if they continue this hot streak against the spread into the second half.
Right, yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more in a second. First, let's talk about the Bulls. They kind of closed the first half on a bit of a run, 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 games before the break, and 3 of those covers were by double digits. So what do you think?
It really surprises me that the Bulls have been so good against the spread. Normally, that team that's good straight up, just not great against the spread. And now that they've kind of become an average team at best, they've really started to, kind of start to fall into that undervalued range in some aspects. But really, they have a really tough schedule after the All-Star break. It's just it's not a big enough trend for me to really get excited about Chicago at this point. If they continue it through the All-Star break, that's good. But they've, like I said, pretty tough schedule heading out after the All-Star break. This team's not terribly deep now after they traded Luol Deng. So I just really don't think the Bulls can sustain something very long-term against the spread, like, say, the Raptors have been doing out of nowhere. They just really don't have the makeup to do it right now. I really don't believe in them at this current point in time against the spread. I think they're still probably just going to end up 500 or so to close out the season.
All right, well, let's talk about 3 of those teams that are sort of like what you mentioned, that have all been very good bets in the first half of the season and closed out the first half on great ATS runs. That's Charlotte, Washington, and Toronto. Charlotte, 29-22 against spread in the first half, closed 5-2. Washington, 29-23 against spread in the first half, closed 7-2. And then Toronto, 31-20, closed 6-1 over their last 9 games. All very impressive records all around. Which of those do you think might tail off in the second half?
Well, I already said I think the Raptors are probably going to be a pretty solid bet going forward. I think the one you really have to look at are the Bobcats. They're kind of that team that's on the fringe right now. They're still probably going to end up in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but we've said all season, it's the Eastern Conference, so really it's not saying too much. I think against the spread, they've been very good, and I think in certain situations they'll continue to be undervalued. They actually have been very undervalued on the road in the first half of the season, but a little more recently, they've actually been a little more undervalued at home. I think they've covered maybe 3 of their last 4 home against the spread. I'm not positive on that, but it's somewhere close to there. And they've been playing very well. And I think with Kemba Walker back, it makes them a very undervalued team in certain situations. They just blew out the Mavericks a couple nights ago at home, and we're home underdogs, I believe, in that matchup. So I think they'll be the one that's going to tail off a little bit more towards the end of the season, just because I don't think they're deep enough compared to the Wizards and the Raptors of how more balanced and deep they are. But even though Charlotte, like I said, they've been a little bit impressive, but with the exception of maybe at home, I think it's time to start fading the Bobcats, especially on the road. I don't think they're going to continue to be a great bet now that Kemba's back. I think the books are going to know that. They're going to compensate for that, and I think they'll be the ones that tail off a little bit more than the other two.
All right, and if you had to pick one team that's going to continue their ATS results for the first half, which Eastern Conference team would it be?
I think if we're looking at the 2 teams that have been, or the 3 teams that I think have been the best, the Pacers, the Raptors, and the Wizards, I think it's definitely the Wizards. I think the Raptors, with how well they've been playing against the spread, even though I think they'll continue it, the books are going to catch up to it, I think, in a little bit. And obviously the Pacers, they're really good. Everyone knows this. But the Wizards are kind of that team that's flying under the radar. And I think those are the type of teams we talk about all the time that we really want to keep our eye out for, because the Wizards are a pretty good team, defensively especially, and they're pretty balanced on the road and at home. They play pretty well on both sides. They really don't have a big dip one side or the other. So I think the Wizards team not really in the mainstream right now, still playing very well. I think they can continue to be a pretty solid against the spread bet going forward.
All right, great insights, Jordan. Now let's move on to the West.